Welcome to Making the Leap, the podcast for women who are ready to jump into their future and make those lady boss business dreams come true. With your host, me, Rachel Perry, fellow female entrepreneur, wife, mom, and your personal business building guru. This is where we get real and talk about all the things you need to kick some serious entrepreneurial booty. From overcoming limiting beliefs to sharing the specific strategies I've used to build my own online business from the ground up. I've got you covered, girl. I'm going to be your new BFF when it comes to balancing life, momming, and business with poise, peace of mind, and of course, the power of a good set of fake eyelashes. Forget all the stories you've been told and the choices you've been given. You can have it all, and I'm going to show you how. Hey everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Making the Leap. I hope you are ready for something amazing to happen today because I have none other than my friend Jessica Huddle on the podcast today. Hey girl.
Hey girl, hey.
Oh my gosh. Jessica, first of all, I'm so happy to have you on the podcast because I feel like we have not talked in a really long time.
I know. It's like 2 years since we talked.
That's absurd.
Besides, social media.
I know. I know. So I met Jessica, or Jessica and I met, I feel like was it 5 years ago?
It's been a long time. Through a mutual friend. Yeah. It has been a long time.
A really long time. And I remember the first time I actually met you in real life and we were at the Smart Success conference, the live event.
Yeah.
And I was checking in and you came up and you were like, hi. And I was like, hi. And I was thinking, you're so stinking cute. You were engaged at the time, I feel like.
Probably.
Right?
Yeah, I think so.
And it was just, I don't know. I just connected with you and it's, the rest is history.
Ever since, I know, the rest is history. Every time we connect, it feels like we pick up where we left off too.
I know, and I love that. That's the sign of a true friend, I think.
Yeah. Yeah.
So much has been happening in your life.
Mm-hmm.
And I wanted to bring you on the podcast today because, well, number one, I adore you and I think you're the cutest thing ever, both in looks and personality.
Shucks.
But also, you are just such a wise soul. You really are. Whenever I talk to you, I always end up leaving the conversation with kind of new revelations because you are so wise and you speak such truth. So I really thought having you on the podcast today would just be such a blessing to the listeners. So if you would, before we get down to it, would you just share a little bit about who you are?
Yeah, of course. First of all, I'm so excited to be here. You're a gem too, Rachel. Love you so much.
Keep going. No, I'm kidding.
Keep going. You're so beautiful. You're so great. I love you. So a little bit about me. I often tell kind of this story from how I was raised. I grew up in a home where my mom was emotionally abusive. And so my dad was physically abusive. And the reason why I share that is because so many of the lies that I believed for so long stem and still do like to pop up from my childhood. And I think it's important that we honor and recognize our parents and how we were raised and how we grew up, because it often tells a story about who we are now and what we choose to believe. And so growing up in a home like that, I didn't understand love. I didn't know what love was. I was reaching and searching and trying to figure out who I was. At the time, I was not a believer. I didn't become a believer until I was 21. And so when people would talk about certain things, I was always confused. And so it was kind of me searching for, who is Jessica? What am I doing? What does it mean to be who you are? Just be who you are. And, all these phrases that are thrown at us and trying to figure it out. And so I started my first fitness business at 21, turning 22, bought my first house at 21, turning 22. And so I had to grow up really fast in a home like that. And so I had lived with my cousin for a little while. I was a little bit homeless. My parents had gotten divorced. And I think that through all of that, I can look back and say today, I'm so grateful that I got to experience those things, and how we choose to tell the story now about the things that we experienced really matters. And the testimony that we get to tell about our story, I think is so powerful too. And so a lot of the things I'm so open about is, I'll talk about sex, and I'll talk about all the things that make us feel uncomfortable, mainly because I've been able to walk through them and process through them. And I know that a lot of us hide in shame because we don't want to tell our story. And those are the lies that come for us. I'm not good enough. I'm not qualified. I need to be better than her. I have to be the one that is the best. And those stories that we tell ourselves often come from something deeper, a hole that needs to be filled.
That is so, so true. And I think that was something that drew me to you in the beginning, is when we first met, is that you are so open. You're so open about your past and the struggles that you had through it. And I just remember thinking the way you shed light on these situations, because there are things that have happened in our past that we don't like to talk about it because we are filled with shame. I hate shame. I'm like, every time my kids, if they say I feel ashamed, I'm like, no, let's really work on this, because I carried shame for so many years for some experiences. And it is, to me, the worst thing that one could ever possibly feel, the feeling. And so just the way you speak so openly with your audience, and you just bring such light to those dark places. So you were saying that you started your fitness business and you speak the truth, you share these, you have intimate conversations with your audience to help them. Yeah. Tell us more.
Yeah. And I think that, in marketing, they always say, sell them what they want versus what they need. And I have a really big issue sometimes with that, is because I'm like, this is what you need.
Yeah.
And so I often am just addressing and attacking those things, because now I get to help. And I always say I help women weigh less emotionally, physically, and spiritually.
Oh my gosh.
When I say weigh less, it's like quotations. Okay. It's weighing less, because often when it comes to fitness, we want to weigh less in our bodies, but really our bodies are holding on to our trauma and our emotions. And so, I keep saying, our thoughts are the language of our brain and our feelings are the language of our body. So you might not know what somebody's thinking, but their body language is going to probably tell you what they're feeling.
Yeah.
And so it's just that making that connection of, we want to weigh less, but there's probably something emotionally that actually needs to be. Or you meet somebody that loses a lot of weight, but they still look in the mirror and see that quote unquote, I'll just say inner fat girl or whatever. Right. And then there's still that emotional. And then I say spiritual is maybe you've been really hurt in the church. Maybe, believed false doctrines for a really long time. And now you're like getting these revelations that are rocking you, and you have a lot of forgiveness and bitterness. Right. And so that's why I just love weighing less, so that you can just live an abundant life. Yeah.
Oh, and abundant is such a big word too, and a strong word, because it's so true. We carry so many burdens around in our daily life. Right. So you and I were talking a little bit about this in the pre-show, and I love that I call our conversation. This is what I do with all my guests. I'm like, in our pre-show.
I know we should have recorded it though, because
I know it was so good. I need to learn that lesson every time. I'm like, man, I wish we had recorded that. But we talked about how I refer to her as the inner mean girl. My listeners, they know who I'm talking about when I talk about the inner mean girl. We all have an inner mean girl, even if we're guys. Okay. Yeah. We all have that inner mean girl. And you were saying that she stems from that little girl.
Yeah.
So talk to me about that.
I often think, well, one, we're in such a culture where we're too busy. And also as believers, I feel like if you are a believer, we hold ourselves to the standard, and we're afraid to share what we feel because we're going to get shamed for it. And because there is a standard, right, of emotions and what we're called as far as gospel. And so we don't allow ourselves to feel. And so we don't know the truth from the lies, because we just believe whatever thought comes our way. Mm-hmm. And so what happens though, is that as the years go on, these experiences only build after another experience. So even if it's not that inner mean girl at 12, maybe it's the inner mean girl at 20, that 21-year-old girl that got rejected by a man that now is, trying to prove herself to every other man, which then she's trying to prove herself into her business. Mm-hmm. And so it's this kind of like, we got to retrace it. And so I say the inner mean girl, meaning for me, it was that inner 12-year-old girl mm-hmm. that watched and couldn't stand up to her parents, because your parents are supposed to be your caregivers. And so when they're not caring for you, you internalize it. Mm-hmm. Because as children, we can't see our parents as bad, because we see them as caregivers. Right. They are taking care of us. How else are we going to survive if our parents aren't taking care of us? So we internalize it and we go, I wasn't good enough to be loved. Why did my dad leave me? Why did these things happen to me? And so then we carry that into our marriage against our husbands, or wives if there's a man listening, but we carry these things into it. But really, when the critic comes, we feel like we're not living up to a standard of measure that we feel like we should be. But really, it's that little person inside of you that was hurt, that you're trying to prove to yourself that you are good enough, that you do deserve it, that you are smart enough to do the task that you're called to do. And it can stem from, again, like a marriage, a bad relationship with your body, or, you know, you watched your parents' diet, or your mom called you fat. Like any of those moments are still those moments that shaped a part of you that your body's holding on to, and it needs a new story. Yeah. But we often tell ourselves that same story. And so what happens is that your body becomes the leader, not your mind.
Oh, whoa. Your body becomes the leader
and not your mind.
Woo. That is big. So, and as you're saying, you know, it's the same story. It's like the same story. It just sounds different, but, right? It all stems back to that root.
Yeah.
So I know that you have a podcast called What's the Truth? And each week you talk about a lie that we tell ourselves. What would you say are the biggest lies? Like the top 3 lies that women tell themselves.
I think the lies that come to my mind all stem from identity. So it's, I'm not good enough. I'm not worthy enough. I can't do it. It all comes back to identity, really. I mean, when you think about it, it's, who am I?
Yeah.
I'm not good enough. So, and another one is, I'm not qualified.
Right.
I shouldn't be doing this because I don't have a master's degree and, you know, all these things. Well, I told somebody the other day, I'm like, I'm a 2 times college dropout. I tried to go to college twice and I ended up paying off debt that I never finished going to college for.
Yeah.
You know? And so it's just that kindness to myself, but it's really goes back to identity and what you're putting yourself in, right? It's, we put our worth in our work, right? We put our worth in our weight.
Yep.
And so what happens is that those things fail us because they change.
Right.
But our identity and who we are doesn't.
That's so true. And I think we have these expectations for ourselves, right? We have these expectations for ourselves based on what other people are doing or what other people have said. I don't know where I was. I think it was at a conference that I emceed last week. And she said, the person who was on stage, the speaker said, when we tell ourselves, well, we should be doing this or we should be doing that, according to who?
Yeah. Yeah.
Who said we should be? Is that us saying what we should be? Why? Where are these expectations coming from? And where do you think they come from? Where do these expectations that we place on ourselves, do they stem from that little 12-year-old girl as well?
Yeah, it can stem from wherever that place was that you feel like when we find ourselves shooting on ourselves, like it's your, what's the reality? What is really going on versus the emotion that I'm carrying into my reality?
Yeah.
You know, and so why should I be this? Well, I want to be because X, Y, Z. And here's the thing I want to address. Like you can be in your gifts and God can put desires on your heart and you're like, yes, like I know that I'm called and that's good. But when we go from striving, that's where, you know, it gets really blurry in that whole of like, I should be doing this. I should. And then we're worn out, taking sabbaticals off social media, you know, because we strive so much and we have to go back to, why should I do this? Like, what's the big deal? I remember Chalene Johnson saying on stage once, like talking about writing a book and being a #1 New York Times bestseller. And she was like, but why?
Yeah.
What is that going to prove? Yes, it comes with accolades and you can put it on your book, but does it prove to your book to be any more than the calling that you were, you know what I mean? Like it gets you to think about why are you chasing the things that you're chasing? Yeah. And it kind of reels you back in to go, even though you can have a desire to be a New York Times bestseller, but at the expense of what?
Yeah.
Is really what she was saying. At the expense of what? Your kids, your marriage,
right?
You know, like,
and what does that do for you?
Yeah.
It's just words. And I think that's a big revelation because I think we put these expectations on ourselves. We don't take the time to think, okay, well, what is that going to do for me? Maybe it's you want to have a 7-figure business. Okay, well, when you get to that 7 figures, what is that going to do for you? Yeah, it's awesome, right? And that is a big achievement. Mm-hmm. But like you said before, like at what expense? You have to really weigh what's important. Mm-hmm. You know?
And I don't want to say it's bad. Like,
no, because it's not.
If you're called to make 7 figures and you have the skills and he's equipped you, do it.
Yeah.
But we so often relate what we're making into everything about who we are. And if we miss the benchmark, we call ourselves a failure, or we go, it's time to give up. And it's like everything.
Yeah. It's those expectations, right? If you have that expectation, and then it's about what you put on it too.
Yeah.
You know, what does that mean? It doesn't make you any more worthy, you know, being a number one, you know, bestseller, or being a millionaire, or having, you know, 200,000 followers, whatever you have, it doesn't make you any more worthy. And I remember that revelation too, for me personally in my business, kind of suddenly realizing that my achievements didn't make me any more worthy. I wasn't any smarter. I will tell you too, when I get close to achieving my goals, because it's important to set goals. It's important to have things that you're striving for.
Hard work is good.
Absolutely.
Hard work is good. Absolutely. It's required of us, you know, especially biblically.
Yeah. And we need to have that vision. We need to have that focus as to where we're going. But, you know, what does it mean? I feel like James might have said that to me. Like, what are you making this mean? Right? So if you're launching something and you want, you know, 200 people to buy your course or to sign up for your membership, and you only get 150, what does that mean?
Yeah.
Is that a failure? I mean, no. But we put these expectations on ourselves and we get lost in them sometimes, I think.
Yeah, no, it's true. And that's the whole thing of like separating reality. Like, okay, you wanted 200 people, but 150 joined. So, okay, what's the reality? 100 people joined. And then take your emotion out of the reality and go 150 people joined. But then we take our emotion into it of our insecurities, our feelings and all that. And we place something on the outcome because, you know what I mean? So it's just that circle.
Yeah. So going back to kind of, because it all ties in together, the lies, the expectations, the thing that we need to be doing that we're not doing, our comparison and, you know, to other people. How would you say one can move beyond those lies that we tell ourselves or the expectations? I've had a couple of people on here. We've talked about the inner mean girl. We've talked about the lies, but I would love to know what you think is there's some great steps to move beyond those lies.
Yeah, no, it's good. I do want to address, even if you didn't grow up in a terrible home, maybe your parents were super awesome. And maybe they were like, you know, Rachel, you are going to be awesome and you're the best and you need to do the best and be the best all the time. Even those good words can cause you as an adult and a teenager to strive because you don't want to let your parents down.
I completely agree with that.
So I just want to address the other side. Like if you had an amazing childhood and your parents are like awesome and rooting for you all the time, but then there's still that option of where how you heard that and how you take that into your adult life of, I got to go to college to approve my parents and to have them approve of me and to show that I'm doing the best and being the best. And so I did want to address quickly, like the other side of that.
I'm really glad you did, because it reminded me of a conversation I had with my mom yesterday. So growing up, we had a great family. Like, you know, I didn't come from an abusive home. I thought that we were really close. I think my brother and my sister might have different, like, you know, we all have different perceptions. We all have different
absolutely.
But we're a very loving family. But as now that I'm an adult and the way I'm parenting my children, there are things that come out where I'm like, well, I don't want to do that because I hated that part of, you know, how my mom did this. And it's always the mom, really. You know, you think, well, I didn't like how that made me feel. So I'm going to do, you know, B and, you know, whatever instead. And what I'm finding is that I tend to overcompensate for that, so much so that I kind of take it to the other side. For example, and my mom said something to me yesterday about it as we were sitting at breakfast. I said, Mom, it makes me nervous. She's probably listening to this. And so, Mom, I hope it's okay. But I said, Mom, I don't want you driving my kids anywhere. It makes me nervous. I said, they get anxious too. And she said, well, actually, you've created that anxiety for them. And I was like, no, I haven't, Mom. You're just not a great driver. And she said, well, no, you actually have created that for them because you say, are you nervous? Does that make you anxious? And when she said that to me, I took a moment and I stood back and I realized I've done that exact thing. They're not nervous to drive with my mom. And if they are, the only reason they are is because I've put that in their head.
Yeah.
My mom is a fine driver. I just don't like driving with her. And I have anxiety around it for various reasons.
Yeah.
But that is my reality. And that's something that I have to work through. But yet I'm going to the other side of things and I'm creating this reality for them that it's not fair to them. And I say that, but we all have things that we carry with us, right?
Yeah, we're just messy people. We're not going to get it right. Yeah.
And as moms, as you know, our parents are doing the best that they can.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So when they raised us, they did the very best that they could. And I think comes, you know, a lot of people had tough things that happened in their childhood. Like, and if you talk to my brother, it's like our parents are different, but it's who we are. And I do feel the need to be like, he loves my parents too. Like, not I'm like sharing like, you know, deep stuff of our family. My mom.
Sorry, I'm probably bringing that out in you. That's just because we're together.
Right. Right. But that being said, like it is, you're right. It doesn't matter how you were raised. We still carry things with us, things that don't even necessarily make sense.
Yeah.
But I'm really glad you said that.
Yeah. And most people are probably thinking like, I'm just never going to get it right. Then what's the point? I think it's just important. Like we're messy people and just be the first to apologize. Like, I'm sorry if I put this on you. I was actually this is why I did this, and explain to them.
Yeah.
You know, explain to them why so that people can understand. Yep. And then they're like, oh,
there is so much power in that too.
Yeah.
I have seen my marriage turn around from me just saying, listen, you know what? I was in the wrong. And I've seen that conversation that I had with my mom yesterday, just being willing to take a step back and not be defensive and not be like, well, no, I'm not wrong. And just being willing to step back and go, you know what? Yeah. Thank you for bringing that to my attention. So I agree. God, that could be a whole nother podcast.
I know. Well, our defensiveness is our insecurity, right? Because then that starts to attack our identity. When somebody comes at us with something and they're like, no, Rachel, it was you. You're like, who? What? Yeah. You're telling me what? And then you're kind of like, I think that when I always call our spider senses, like, you know, I don't know.
So, I like that.
It's like our spidey senses. It's like we start to go into defense mode because we want to protect ourselves and we want to defend ourselves. But really when you, like you said, take a moment, step back and go, oh, I'm so defensive because I can see she's probably right.
And you know what? I think too, when we do that, when we are willing to step back and look at ourselves, be introspective and not be defensive, it also opens up the relationship even more and that conversation even more because the other person goes, oh, okay. Yeah. Because there's almost defensiveness on their part too. They're geared, okay, I said this, but now my wall is up because I'm ready.
Yeah.
I'm ready for you to come at me. Yeah. And I have learned that in all these years of being on this earth, I have learned that being willing to see your faults is a tremendous strength.
Yeah.
Because when we are willing to look at it, because nobody is perfect. And like you said, we are messy people. That's who we are.
We leave our messes everywhere.
I mean, listen, I leave so many messes everywhere.
You know, you just got to go back and just clean up, you know, be willing to clean up.
Yeah. So I just want to kind of wrap this up. Actually,
let's go back to practical lies, right? You wanted to know, let's talk about like practical things. Okay, let's go to there. How about that?
Yes. Because I feel like you and I could talk forever. And so we may have to bring you back. And so we can just continue this conversation.
Yeah.
But yeah. So go ahead.
A couple of things I was thinking about. So 2 main things. First, we have to recognize. So in order for us to understand a lie, I want you to think about this. We know a tree by its fruit. And so if you're like, well, what's a lie? How do I know? Well, what kind of fruit is it producing in your life? So what thought are you thinking and what kind of fruit is that producing? And so if you're thinking a thought of, I'm not good enough, what is that producing in your life? How is it affecting your marriage? How is it affecting your finances? How is it affecting your health? Because you're going to see the fruit of it. And so going and understanding, okay, if I can just take a moment, think about the thought and what produced that and what it's producing, you can easily distinguish, oh my gosh, like this is not producing a fruit in my life that I'd like. You know, if I reference scripture, you know, in Philippians 4:8, it talks about think on these things, what is true, what is right, what is noble, what is trustworthy, what is of good report. Like these things matter. And so is what you're thinking about true? Is it right? Is it trustworthy? Is it noble? Is it of good report? And if it's not, then we can say it's probably a lie. Mm-hmm. So those are the 2 biggest things that kind of help, you know, because I go through a whole process myself when I'm feeling a feeling of I allow, and it can happen in a matter of 30 seconds, but I ask myself questions all the time. So if I'm feeling jealous, I'll take a moment and go, I'm feeling jealous. I'm feeling that she's better than me. And then I'll go, why do I feel this way? And then I'll go, where does it come from? And then I'll ask myself, okay, what's the truth? Mm-hmm. And so I do this to myself so that in the moment I can feel what I feel and know what I know so that I can cry if I need to for a couple minutes or, just dismiss it and continue to do. So it's like this process, but those are the two biggest things of lies.
That's so powerful. And I think if we get into the habit of doing that, of going through that process where we catch ourselves, and I get knocked down, I think more so when I'm really tired, when I'm stressed. Right. And so sometimes you're like, I just don't have the energy to fight those thoughts. But I think the more we do it all the time, that we identify those lies and we go through that, is this the truth? Is there any fruit? And going through, that kind of checklist, it becomes a habit. Right? So we automatically do it.
So for all the ladies, like if it's that time of the month for me, what I tell myself? I'm like, Jess, don't trust your thoughts.
Yeah.
I actually tell myself, I'm like, Jess, don't trust your thoughts. Because usually if I'm tired, I'll just say, Jess, you're tired. Don't trust your thoughts. Yeah. Because when I'm, our brain does amazing things when we're tired. It's just the reality. Yeah. And I'll tell myself, Jess, don't trust your thoughts, because things will come like, what are you doing, Jess? Are you being lazy today because you want to rest? Like anything and everything will just start coming, like you're not good enough and this is stupid and this project is...
Her mean girl strikes. She's like, oh man, this is my favorite form of Jess.
Yeah. And I'm just like, Jess, don't trust your thoughts. Like, and I have to tell myself that, because instead of me just trying to bring truth to it in the midst of tiredness and stuff, sometimes I'll just be like, look, I'll just cut it off and just go, we'll deal with it. But right now, don't trust it.
Yeah, that's so good. Oh my gosh. Okay. So Jessica, I adore you. And I'm so thankful that you have been here today. And I want people to get more of you because you're so good. So tell us where they can find you.
They can find me on my podcast, What's the Truth, like we talked about today. So just, it's on iTunes, Spotify. It's just called What's the Truth by Jessica Huddle. And then on Instagram, Jessica Huddle, Facebook. I'm mostly on Instagram nowadays.
Yes,
I feel like a lot of people are, but Instagram, Jessica Huddle. And then I have a freebie for you guys, 5-day devotional on 5 lies that women believe. And Rachel will probably just link that in the show notes.
Yeah, that'll be in the show notes for sure. You're definitely going to have to check that out. The 5 lies that women believe. Jessica, sister, thank you so much for being here today. It means the world to me. And I love that we've connected.
I know, me too. Thank you for having me. So fun.
Oh my gosh. Anytime, sister.
That's it for this week's episode of Making the Leap. Thank you so much for joining me today, you guys. And hey, listen, if you loved today's show and have a friend who might benefit from this episode or even the whole podcast, send them a link, share this episode, or screenshot it, share it on Instagram, and tag me at Rachel A. Perry. I would truly be so honored. And as a thank you for sharing me on Instagram, you'll be entered into a drawing for an Amazon gift card. Who doesn't love Amazon Prime? Am I right? And hey, listen, if you haven't already, come and hang out with me over on Instagram, where I share all kinds of craziness and free resources to help you make the leap, both in business and in life. Because let's face it, life and business can be hard. So why not get all the help we can? Till next week, my friends, take care.